Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty, known today simply as RFE and RL, emerged as a beacon of truth during the Cold War. It was founded almost directly as a counter to the propaganda machine of the Soviet Union. Imagine, for a moment, tens of millions of people living behind an iron curtain with state-controlled media dictating their understanding of the world. RFE and RL was their lifeline, a critical link to uncensored, truthful information in a time of rampant disinformation. One of the moments that truly captures RFE and RL's significance is the Hungarian Revolution of 1956. Hungarians rose up against Soviet control, and amidst the chaos, they turned to RFE and RL for news of the outside world. The station offered not just information, but hope, a sense that they weren't alone in their fight for freedom. And then, of course, there's the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. By that point, RFE and RL had become synonymous with democracy's voice, providing firsthand accounts and stirring narratives to millions eagerly awaiting liberation. But this wasn't just an outfit confined to those Cold War boundaries. Over the decades, RFE and RL adapted, evolving into a global broadcaster with a presence in 23 countries and programming in 27 languages. With a weekly audience of nearly 50 million people, their influence spans far beyond Eastern Europe or even Russia. Places like Afghanistan, Iran, and Belarus now rely on RFE and RL to hold regimes accountable, report censored stories, and ensure that democratic ideals are never out of reach. Now think about that for a second. That's 50 million individuals receiving vital, uncensored information every week. These broadcasts are more than just news. They're lifelines to those living under suppression, voices in the darkness where oppression otherwise thrives. It's an extraordinary legacy to celebrate, but it's one that exists in a precarious balance. Play this clip.
The U.S. State Department is now calling the rapid dismantling of the U.S. Agency for Global Media a fluid situation. The agency, you should know, was behind global news outlets such as Radio Free Europe and Radio Free Asia and The Voice of America. These are news outlets responsible for giving news from the United States where there is a free and fair press around the world. Voice of America alone reached a weekly audience of 350 million people in more than 40 different languages, and now that entire staff of 1,300 journalists has been put on leave. So what will be the impact of these firings? Joining us now to discuss, Alsu Kurmasheva. You might remember her name, if not her face. She's a Radio Free Europe journalist who was freed in the prison exchange between the U.S. and Russia last August, and we would have her husband and daughter on to talk about her case. And also, it's nice to be able to interview you about something other than your detention, and nice to have you free. But what was your reaction this past weekend?
Thank you, Jay, for having me.
What was your reaction this past weekend when you heard that these outlets, including Radio Free Europe, where you worked, have been gutted by the Trump administration? What's going to be the impact of this?
Well, impact will be enormous. Impact will be huge. I'll give you something from my insight. I just, before talking to you, I looked into my prison diary, and what's the odds that such a coincidence? March 17th last year, I made a short note in my prison diary that I found the newspaper that I was waiting for a week on a prisoner guard's table. I was subscribed, my friend subscribed me to the last independent newspaper in Russia. And I knew I was getting the newspaper either on Friday or on Monday. Last year, March 17th was Wednesday. And on Wednesday, I didn't get it. And accidentally, I just was passing by the guard's office and I saw it on the table, which means that nobody is watching or listening or reading state propaganda. Even prisoner guards are reading independent information. This is what will happen. The impact will be enormous. Also, we have people 200 journalists covering Ukrainian war in the field right now. The world depends on their coverage. Every third Ukrainian is reading and watching them, and we need them there. We have more than 20 Iranian podcasts. Those are young people doing podcasts for their audience. But let's not think about Russians, Ukrainians, Iranians. Let's talk about Americans, Jay. Let's talk about Americans. How is America going to tell its story if in Russia, Instagram and Facebook are banned as extremist organizations? X is blocked there. How is America going to do that? This is the impact that will be a long time impact, and of course, millions of viewers and listeners. There can be empty space in media. Somebody will fill in, and Russia and Chinese propaganda will fill in.
Yeah. To be clear, these governments these outlets are government funded, but they operate independently. So what message does slashing them and firing hundreds of journalists send to nations out there who don't support a free press, but maybe their citizens heard Voice of America or Radio Free Europe or the like?
Well, Radio Free Europe was always an independent media organization. Yes, we were funded by grants by American Congress, but we got bipartisan support. We got always. We were operating on grants, and the last year budget was $142 million, and Russia and China are spending 50 times more, because Russia and China know that the power of soft power is enormous. It's a matter of safety. It's a matter of security. It's a matter of telling the story. This is we are still in business. Nobody quit. Nobody resigned. Our leadership is working on it, and we hope we will stay in business. Why one way or another. We really appreciate all kind of support coming our way. Also suggestions and offers. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Whatever offer or support we get, we will accept. And also legal support. We really appreciate that. We are grateful.
Critical and time-honored as Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty could face the risk of being silenced, not by an authoritarian government, but by the leadership of its own financial lifeline, the United States. Last week, President Trump signed an executive order aimed at, cutting bureaucratic inefficiencies. But the reality of this move? It has effectively gutted the U.S. Agency for Global Media and suddenly frozen RFE and RL's federal grant funding. Now, here's the sticking point. RFE and RL operates under congressional appropriations, funds legally allocated to sustain its global operations. And the lawsuit they filed, it's not some desperate plea. They're saying the cessation, it outright disregards these appropriations laws. The International Broadcasting Act clearly mandates funding for RFE and RL through grants, and the agency's refusal crosses serious legal boundaries. Their filing couldn't be clearer. This isn't optional, it's the law. But what does this mean in practice? Well, we're already seeing layoffs, staff placed on administrative leave, offices tossed into disarray. Almost overnight, the organization's capacity to deliver key news and analysis to regions starved of reliable information has been clipped. And just consider where this impact ripples outward. Afghanistan, Belarus, Russia, places where freedom of the press is suffocated by censorship. These disruptions are nothing short of catastrophic for those who depend on RFE and RL to pierce through the chaos of misinformation. And let me tell you, the reactions couldn't be more divided. Authoritarian regimes like Russia and China are practically applauding this decision. It's easy to connect the dots. Silencing media like RFE and RL makes their propaganda machines even harder to challenge. Meanwhile, democratic leaders across Europe are asking, why now? Why undermine this vital beacon of truth, especially when independent journalism is under siege worldwide? It's truly heartening to see the European Union stepping up at this pivotal moment with the Czech Republic rallying its neighbors to support Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty. 7 countries, including Germany and several Nordic and Baltic nations, have voiced their support for finding alternative funding to sustain RFE and RL. Their rationale couldn't be clearer. They understand that losing this vital source of independent journalism weakens our collective ability to counter authoritarian narratives. I mean, can you imagine the vacuum more propaganda could fill if these voices went silent? One voice that encapsulated this urgency? Swedish Foreign Minister Jessica Rosencrantz. She said, and I quote, "Radio Free Europe must remain an important voice for freedom and democracy, especially in those places where it's most needed." It's that last part, where it's most needed, that gets me. It's not just about news. It's about empowerment, about ensuring that those living under suppression don't feel erased. And yet, it's not just an external issue. This moment asks something of each of us. Imagine what it means to listeners, families in Belarus, journalists in Afghanistan, young activists in Russia. These aren't hypothetical people. They are real individuals who rely on RFE and RL for clarity amidst government censorship. This isn't just about the finances, folks. It's about what we value as a global community. And let me underline this. If the EU, if these smaller nations can marshal resources in defense of democratic principles, why shouldn't we? So, as we wrap up today, I'll leave you with this. History has shown us that complacency comes at a price. The fight for media freedom, for truth, doesn't begin or end with RFE and RL, but its survival matters. It's a part of the larger mosaic of democracy, something we as Americans, as global citizens, can't afford to take for granted. On that note, let's each reflect on how we can champion this fight. Because honestly, losing that lifeline would not just weaken the oppressed, it would weaken us all. That wraps up today's episode of The Real 411. I want to personally thank each and every one of you for tuning in and for your continued support. It means more than you know. If you found value in today's discussion, please drop a comment. Follow us on all social media platforms and let us know what topics you'd like to see us cover next. Be sure to sign up for our email newsletter so you never miss an update or exclusive insight. And if you believe in independent media that digs deeper and dares to tell the truth, please consider following The Real 411 on Substack and Fanbase. We offer both free and paid subscriptions, and your support helps us continue producing content that informs, empowers, and sparks real conversation. Thanks again for being part of this journey, because remember, the story is never just the headline. Until next time, stay informed, stay bold, and stay real.